They did not just leave a scar, they systematically dismantled the one person who was entirely willing to go to the very ends of the earth for them. When you give a narcissist everything you have, your complete loyalty, your tireless energy, and your very soul, you are not just a partner to them, you become their absolute lifeline. But here is the single secret they are most desperate to keep hidden from you. The exact moment they decided to destroy you, they actually sealed their own ultimate fate. They truly believe they have won simply because they walked away or managed to crush your spirit. However, in reality, they have crossed an irreversible psychological point of no return. By breaking the very person who provided them with unconditional stability, they have unknowingly set off a chain reaction of 6 deep internal triggers that will quietly eat away at their life for many years to come. These triggers remain entirely invisible to the outside world, yet they are completely irreversible. They have traded a lifetime of genuine safety and peace for a fleeting, temporary hit of ego, and that trade represents a massive debt they can never possibly pay back. Before we dive deeply into the precise mechanics of their eventual downfall, you need to have a moment of absolute, brutal honesty with yourself. Take a moment to look back at the sheer exhaustion, the constant confusion, and that deep, hollow feeling inside your chest. If you have ever felt like an empty shell of your former self after trying endlessly to satisfy them, stop right now and ask yourself one vital question. What specific parts of my own soul did I have to ignore just to keep them comfortable? Think carefully about all the glaring red flags you chose to paint white and all the personal boundaries you allowed them to trample over just so they would not get angry with you. Your honest answer to that single question is the absolute key to your ultimate freedom. It matters far more than any half-hearted declaration of love they ever whispered to you, and it matters far more than any cruel insult they ever hurled your way. You need to realize right now that everything they project as strength or superiority is nothing more than an extraordinarily thin and fragile mask. It is a paper-thin shield held up by a terrified child who literally cannot survive without a host to feed on, and right now that mask is finally starting to slip away. When a narcissist begins the calculated process of devaluing you, it feels deeply personal, but it is actually a desperate survival mechanism on their part. In the very beginning of the relationship, they absolutely adored your stability, your warmth, and your kindness. It was the exact set of qualities they completely lacked within themselves. But as time went on, that exact same stability slowly transformed into their single biggest fear. Because you are naturally consistent, genuine, and loyal, you inadvertently become a clear mirror that constantly reflects their own internal inconsistency, deceit, and chaotic inner world. They simply cannot handle the humiliating reality that they actually need you in order to feel okay about themselves. To a narcissist, needing another human being feels like an intolerable weakness, and to them, being weak is completely unacceptable. So they abruptly flip the script. They begin to view your pure love as an irritating leash and your constant care as a direct threat to their perceived dominance. The very warmth that once felt like a safe home to them suddenly turns into a cold, calculated indifference. They completely stop seeing you as a cherished person to love and instead start seeing you as a dynamic obstacle that must be overcome. This sudden shift into open contempt is a carefully calculated move designed to regain what they perceive as the upper hand. To keep their fragile ego fully inflated, they feel compelled to entirely rewrite the history of your entire relationship. Suddenly, the simple fact that you desire basic human communication makes you sound needy. Your reasonable request for mutual respect is immediately labeled as demanding or overly controlling. They begin to systematically weaponize your absolute best traits against you. If you are naturally empathetic, they call you far too sensitive. If you are deeply reliable and steady, they call you boring and predictable. This is not just a minor change in their daily mood. It is a deliberate psychological deconstruction of your fundamental character. They detach emotionally while continuing to drain your practical and emotional resources, acting exactly like a parasite that secretly despises the very host it relies on for survival. They create a deliberate, heavy imbalance where you end up doing 100% of the emotional work while they provide absolutely 0% of the actual value, all while strategically making you feel like you are the sole person who is constantly failing. The true cruelty of the devaluation trap lies within their masterful use of gaslighting. They are not merely treating you poorly. They are actively training you to believe that you fully deserve to be treated poorly. By slowly chipping away at your sense of reality day after day, they force you to constantly question your own memory, your own perception, and your overall self-worth. They desperately want you to believe that your actual value as a person has drastically dropped. But the absolute truth is the exact opposite. Your inherent value is so extraordinarily high that they felt forced to break you completely just so they could feel like they were standing on your level. They intentionally attempt to fracture your sanity because a confident, emotionally healthy, and grounded version of you is someone they can no longer manipulate or control. They urgently need you to remain small, thoroughly confused, and desperately seeking their validation. This is because as long as you are constantly looking to them to fix the profound pain they cause, they get to remain the unquestioned God of your universe. But you must always remember that they only ever look tall because you are currently down on your knees. The very moment you stand up tall, their elaborate trap completely loses all of its power over you. The fundamental reason this betrayal feels so deeply and painfully personal is that it was explicitly designed to be that way from the start. A narcissist does not simply lash out blindly in random anger. They strike with a terrifying level of emotional precision that feels almost surgical in nature. Think back to the earliest days of your relationship during the intense honeymoon phase, where you felt safer and more understood than you ever had in your entire life. During that cherished time, you opened your heart completely. You willingly shared your deepest childhood wounds, your greatest fears, and the delicate insecurities that you normally keep locked away securely from the rest of the world. You genuinely believed you were building deep, lasting intimacy, but in stark reality, you were inadvertently handing them a precise blueprint and roadmap of all your deepest vulnerabilities. The exact moment they decide to turn on you, they do not rely on generic insults. They go straight for the softest, most tender parts of your soul. They ruthlessly weaponize the exact secrets you trusted them to protect with your life. This behavior is not just a display of bad temper or simple meanness. It is a carefully calculated strategic strike designed to completely disarm you and ensure you never feel stable enough to question or challenge their authority. This surgical precision inflicts a truly devastating toll on both your physical and mental well-being because it forces your central nervous system into a chronic state of permanent high alert. When the single person who is supposed to serve as your ultimate safe harbor becomes the very person who knows precisely which emotional buttons to press to make you spiral into despair, your brain enters an ongoing state of raw survival mode. You become unnaturally hyper-aware of everything around you. You constantly scan their face for the slightest hint of a hidden scowl. You meticulously analyze every subtle shift in the tone of their simple greetings. You overthink and read deeply into every single long, cold silence. You become an absolute expert at walking on fragile eggshells, constantly altering your personality, suppressing your honest opinions, and deliberately shrinking your physical and emotional presence just to avoid another explosive outburst. You are no longer simply maintaining the peace. You are actively engaged in the slow, agonizing process of abandoning yourself. Piece by piece, you give away your beloved hobbies, your cherished friendships, and your daily joy, desperately hoping that if you just make yourself small enough, quiet enough, and agreeable enough, they will finally stop hurting you. However, the finish line is designed to keep moving constantly because their true objective is never for you to improve or satisfy them. Their real objective is for you to be completely broken. This dynamic inevitably drags you deep into the suffocating fog of cognitive dissonance, which is easily one of the most exhausting and agonizing mental states a human being can ever endure. Your mind quickly becomes an intense internal battlefield where two entirely contradictory realities are constantly fighting for total dominance. On one side of the battle, you have the vivid memory of the incredible person who once claimed to love you so deeply, the attentive, kind, and passionate partner who seemed like your perfect soulmate. On the other side, you have the cruel individual standing right in front of you, the person who is currently being callously dismissive, emotionally cold, or intentionally vicious. Because the human brain literally cannot process how one single individual can embody both of these extremes, it frantically searches for a logical bridge to connect the two opposing images. And heartbreakingly, that logical bridge almost always takes the form of relentless self-blame. You constantly tell yourself that if you had just refrained from bringing up that topic, or if you had displayed a bit more patience, or if you were simply better, smarter, or more attractive in some way, the original loving version of them would instantly return. You end up becoming the tireless investigator of your own undoing, obsessively searching for a fundamental flaw within yourself that does not actually exist. You must come to understand that this agonizing internal war raging inside your head is not your fault, nor is it a sign of weakness on your part. It is simply clear proof that your healthy brain is desperately trying to make rational sense of a relationship dynamic that is fundamentally nonsensical. You are attempting to apply human empathy, basic fairness, and normal logic to a person who operates strictly on a rigid script of total power, dominance, and control. The feeling of absolute safety they offered you in the very beginning was never a true foundation. It was merely the bait on the hook. They were required to make you feel completely secure so that you would willingly provide them with the exact emotional ammunition they are using against you today. You are not failing at this relationship, nor did you fail in the past. You are simply the latest innocent victim in a destructive cycle that was deeply broken long before you ever entered the picture. They did not suddenly transform into a monster over time. The heavy mask they were wearing simply became too exhausting for them to hold up any longer. When you finally realized that their surgical cruelty was never truly about your supposed flaws, but rather about their own frantic need to destroy whatever good qualities they could never truly possess, the suffocating cognitive dissonance finally begins to break apart. You are not a broken problem that needs to be fixed by them. You were the rare prize they tried so desperately to steal, and it is finally time for you to take yourself back completely. Perhaps the most chilling and disturbing aspect of this entire traumatic experience is what systematically occurs in the immediate minutes and hours right after they have inflicted deep emotional pain upon you. While you are left completely reeling, gasping to catch your breath, and trying desperately to make sense of their unprovoked cruelty, you might notice something profoundly unsettling about their demeanor. They seem entirely fine. In fact, more often than not, they appear significantly better than fine. They frequently seem unnaturally calm, eerily confident, or strangely energized, looking very much like someone who has just completed an invigorating workout or won a prestigious grand prize. This eerie reaction is not a figment of your imagination. It represents a real, potent psychological high that they actively feed on. To a narcissist, causing you intense emotional pain is the ultimate, undeniable proof of their dominance over you. When they watch you cry, when they observe you desperately scrambling to explain yourself, or when they see you begging on your knees for basic clarity, it strongly reinforces their overwhelming sense of complete control. In their deeply twisted logic, if they possess the power to single-handedly disrupt your entire emotional reality, they must somehow be far more powerful than you. Your raw pain becomes their essential daily fuel, a sudden hit of narcissistic supply that instantly makes them feel completely untouchable, superior, and invincible. This exact dynamic is why they can sit calmly across from you and act as if absolutely nothing happened just 10 short minutes after initiating a massive, devastating blowout. They are not merely being thick-skinned or calm. They are actively practicing a cold form of radical emotional detachment. By pretending the entire incident was completely insignificant, or even worse, by boldly telling you that your natural reaction is the real underlying problem, they effectively shield themselves from taking even a single ounce of genuine guilt or personal accountability. They look directly at your falling tears, not with human empathy, but with a cold, analytical contempt. If they can successfully convince you that you are just overreacting or completely crazy, they never have to confront the ugly reality of their own abusive behavior. It represents a total win-win situation for them. They get the immediate rush of an intense power trip, and they get to walk away with a completely clean conscience. However, you urgently need to understand that this apparent victory is entirely hollow. It is nothing more than a short-lived chemical spike that requires increasingly greater amounts of cruelty to maintain over time, and it marks the absolute beginning of a massive internal void that they are entirely unprepared to handle. What they fail to realize in their fleeting moment of triumph is that by discarding you, they are effectively cutting off their very own psychological oxygen supply. You were never just a casual partner to them. You were the absolute primary source of their internal stability. You were the unique person who provided a steady, unwavering reflection of their inherent worth, even during the many moments when they did not deserve it in the slightest. You willingly offered them years of endless patience, deep emotional understanding, and a remarkable level of consistency that they are fundamentally incapable of generating on their own. When they recklessly push you away or destroy that sacred bond, they permanently lose the only clear mirror that ever showed them a version of themselves they actually liked. They foolishly believe they can just easily swap you out for someone brand new. And on the surface, it might genuinely look like they have accomplished just that. They will quickly seek out new people, desperately chasing the temporary thrill of fresh attention and the easy praise of someone who has not yet seen the terrifying reality hidden behind their mask. But here is the absolute reality that they can never truly escape. Novelty is never a substitute for true depth. They can easily find 1,000 different people to offer them a superficial compliment, but they can never find anyone to replace the deep years of history, effort, and soul-deep loyalty that you invested into them. The brand new person is nothing more than a fleeting, temporary distraction, acting as a flimsy band-aid placed over a gaping, unhealable wound. Without your steady, grounding presence to stabilize them, the narcissist gradually begins to feel a cold, creeping sense of deep restlessness. The emotional high offered by the new person fades far faster than the last one did. As a result, they become increasingly impulsive, recklessly jumping from one cheap thrill to the next, frantically trying to outrun the rapidly growing emptiness inside their soul. They are like a desperate person continuously attempting to fill up a water bucket that has a massive hole at the very bottom. No matter how much outside attention or validation they pour inside, it never manages to stay full. They eventually realize deep down, though their pride will ensure they never admit it out loud, that by intentionally breaking you, they permanently broke the only thing that was actually keeping them sane and anchored. They are ultimately left with a terrifying void that grows significantly deeper with every single person they discard, leaving them far more isolated, miserable, and hollow than ever before in their entire lives. While the narcissist remains completely trapped in their endless, exhausting cycle of chasing temporary highs and frantically running away from their own inner shadows, something truly remarkable begins to quietly take shape within you. It always begins as a very quiet, almost imperceptible shift deep inside your spirit. At first, it does not feel like a grand victory at all. Instead, it feels like a heavy, suffocating weight of deep grief. You find yourself intensely mourning not just the sudden end of a painful relationship, but the complete death of a beautiful dream. You are deeply grieving the exact person you truly thought they were, the warm partner who was once kind, the person who passionately promised to protect your heart, and the companion with whom you envisioned sharing your entire future. This specific phase is extraordinarily painful because your heart is finally catching up to the terrifying truth that your gut instinct has known for a very long time. Gradually, you stop automatically reaching for your phone to call them the moment something notable happens in your day, and you finally stop endlessly rehearsing complex arguments in your head, trying to figure out how to explain your feelings in a way that will finally make them understand your pain. The deep silence that used to terrify you to your core slowly begins to transform into the precise, peaceful space where your ultimate healing takes root. As the dense fog of intense grief finally begins to lift from your mind, it is swiftly replaced by a razor-sharp, brilliant clarity that changes absolutely everything about how you view the past. This is the exact defining moment when you completely stop making soft excuses for their unacceptable behavior. You no longer tell yourself that they merely suffered through a hard childhood, or that they are just unusually stressed at work, or that they do not truly mean the incredibly cruel things they say when they get angry. You begin to clearly view their actions not as random, isolated incidents of poor judgment, but as a deliberate, calculated, and highly repetitive pattern of control. You come to the sudden, profound realization that their cruelty was never an accidental mistake. It was a primary tool. This massive realization hits like a brutal punch to the gut because it forces you to face a truly devastating truth. The person you love so deeply was merely a fictitious character they deliberately played to gain your complete trust. You are finally admitting to yourself that the loving soulmate you spent years trying to save never actually existed in reality. It was all just a deceptive mask, specifically designed to mirror your own inherent goodness right back at you. While that harsh truth is exceptionally painful to swallow, it is simultaneously the exact revelation that finally sets your spirit completely free. You come to realize that you cannot keep exhausting yourself trying to save a ghost. This is the precise moment when you begin to powerfully reclaim your stolen energy and personal authority, and it happens the instant you turn your focused gaze entirely away from them and direct it back towards your own well-being. You begin actively listening to that quiet internal voice, the wise inner guidance that you forcefully silenced for months or even long years just to maintain a fragile peace. Those deep instincts you continuously ignored, the strong gut feelings that repeatedly alerted you that something was deeply wrong, suddenly begin to speak with unshakable authority. You realize with total clarity that your basic boundaries were never selfish demands, nor were they controlling requirements. They were the essential protective walls required for your very emotional survival. You completely stop asking them for permission to be treated with basic dignity, and you begin firmly deciding for yourself what toxic behaviors you will no longer tolerate under any circumstances. The immense amount of mental energy you used to waste obsessively analyzing their unpredictable moods, endlessly decoding their ambiguous text messages, and constantly walking on delicate eggshells suddenly flows straight back into nourishing your own life. You completely give up trying to repair a deeply broken person who has zero desire to ever be whole, and you actively begin repairing the sacred relationship you have with yourself. You honor the one faithful person who has quietly stood by you through every single piece of this agony. This profound internal transformation represents the one specific outcome the narcissist never saw coming. They constructed their entire dynamic around the firm assumption that you would always be standing there, forever waiting in the wings, constantly hungry for whatever tiny crumbs of affection they chose to throw your way. They fully expected you to remain completely trapped in a state of endless pain and confusion forever, but they severely underestimated the profound hidden strength of a resilient person who has finally been pushed past their absolute limit. You are not merely moving past a difficult chapter, you are fundamentally evolving as a human being. You are developing a sophisticated level of emotional discernment that makes you permanently immune to every single one of their old manipulation tricks. You eventually reach a point of absolute clarity where you can look directly at their strategic games and see them clearly for what they truly are: exceptionally small, wildly predictable, and deeply sad. The precise day you realize that you no longer desire the old version of them back because you finally understand the reality of who they truly are is the exact day they permanently lose their hold over your life. You are not just stepping away from a toxic dynamic. You are confidently walking back into your own true life, and this time you are never leaving yourself behind again. Eventually, the long silence will inevitably break, and they will make a desperate attempt to hoover you back into their destructive orbit. It almost always begins with something small and seemingly innocent. You might receive a casual text message asking if you have seen a certain new movie, a short message claiming they were just thinking of you, or even a sudden, exceptionally soft apology that sounds precisely like the exact words you spent years desperately longing to hear. However, you must see this maneuver clearly for what it actually represents: a calculated probe. It is never a sign of real personal growth, and it is most certainly not a sign of genuine heartfelt remorse. It is simply a strategic loyalty test executed to see if the door accessing your valuable energy remains secretly unlocked. They are not reaching out to you because they genuinely miss your beautiful soul or care about your well-being. They are reaching out strictly because their current primary source of external attention has suddenly run dry, and they urgently want to test whether they can still extract a strong emotional reaction out of you. To a narcissist, even an intensely negative or angry response from you is considered a massive win, simply because it proves beyond a doubt that they still hold the absolute power to move your emotional needle. They are merely checking to see if you are still readily available to be used whenever their private world feels empty and boring. If you make the devastating mistake of allowing them back into your life without witnessing a permanent, fully sustained transformation in their core character, which almost never occurs, you are not returning to the magical honeymoon phase of the relationship. Instead, you are stepping directly back into a toxic cycle that will move 10 times faster and inflict wounds that cut 10 times deeper than before.